Hey, welcome back to Vox Terra. So today I want to cover those recent Syrian airstrikes, or the airstrikes from the U.S., my country, on Syria. I'm going to come at this from a different angle than I think you're going to get from other media outlets. And I want to make it clear, though, that while I'm critical of the United States, it's not coming from a, not like in my own country kind of point of view, or how sometimes people accuse leftists of being. In some ways, I'm actually bringing what I call like a biblical analysis to this, or even a conservative analysis, along with a leftist analysis. There's a saying in the Bible I just want to start off with. Look at the mote in thine own eye before you look at the speck in your brother's eye or neighbor's eye. And really, that's something, that lack of introspection, I think within our media falls into a pattern, a pattern of that sort of backs up or benefits some of the powerful industries that are really, dominating our media and our politics, like the military-industrial complex. So let me share with you a Democracy Now! Article, which that's a little bit more of, you could call it like a typical or a check all the boxes leftist site, but it's really a great news site, I think. So from Democracy Now!, February 26, 2021, President Biden orders airstrikes on Syria, killing 17 Iranian-backed militia members. U.S. Air Force fighter jets bombed buildings in eastern Syria on Thursday, with the Pentagon claiming it successfully targeted Iranian-backed militant groups. Thursday's assault is the first known military action ordered by President Biden. California Congressman member Ro Khanna condemned the attack, saying, "There is absolutely no justification for a president to authorize a military strike that is not in self-defense against an imminent threat without congressional authorization. We need to extricate from the Middle East, not escalate." Now, so right there, notice Ro Khanna is even basing part of this on what you could call a more libertarian or conservative principle about, respecting the Constitution, which really isn't being respected when it comes to war powers. The presidents seem to have this carte blanche, as they say, to just take these military actions without running it through Congress, which would really make the public have to think more about what they or we are involved in. So knowing some historical background that we're not really taught in schools, okay? We're not taught this. I picked a lot of this up elsewhere, but I didn't know it at the time or in school, from high school, middle school, etc. And there's a saying I learned in a political science class, that authoritarians like to delay the news until it is no longer news. And that's really the case. So when we look at our conflict with Iran, we need to go back to the 1950s, which we were never taught. And this was really seminal. There was a coup that our CIA, that we're just never told about, staged in Iran to overthrow what was apparently a democratically elected socialist government whose crime, if you want to call it that, was to nationalize or take public control of the oil industry away from, I believe it was called the British Petroleum Company. I think that was the name of the company at the time, but I've got a PBS link I can share with you. Now you might say, "Oh, that's old news, old news." It really isn't, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was a kid, I'm old enough to remember the hostage crisis with Iran, and even then, so what happened with that coup is the CIA then put in the Shah. Okay, they took it away from that democratically elected president. I think his name was Mossadegh. And they put in the Shah, and the Shah had a reputation for torturing and that kind of thing. Well, when the Iranian hostage crisis happened, the news really didn't talk about that historical relevance. So me as a kid, and I think most Americans, were just kind of like, how dare they do this? Which, of course, how dare they take those hostages? Agreed, okay? But if the news media also really highlighted for us, our role that we never really even knew about in creating this situation, and putting this Shah in place and taking away what looked like a free and fair election from them because they dared to nationalize their oil industry. And then they're left with really no alternative but to have almost like, you can consider really the Ayatollahs and the Iranian Revolution. In some ways, it's almost like a conservative revolution, right? Because the leftists, the socialists, couldn't maintain Iran's independence from foreign powers. So now they're going to give these theocrats, under the Ayatollahs, a shot at it. And that's really what they have there. It's like a theocracy. There's a theocratic branch to their government. So I think if we really understood, we put this Shah in there, he was accused of torturing people, and then we might not have been so revved up and so war-given, right? So what happens next with the American public? Well, then, because we don't know about this part of history, we're completely fine with us, sponsoring Saddam Hussein under the Ba'ath Party, which we're not even really ever educated what the Ba'ath Party is all about either, by the way. We're completely fine, funding Saddam Hussein to now invade Iran. Now, meanwhile, keep in mind that Iraq also has a nationalized oil industry with it under the Ba'ath Party, what's called the Ba'ath Party. Saddam Hussein was from the Ba'ath Party. And my understanding of the Ba'ath Party, which we're never taught about, is that they're what was called like pan-Arab nationalism, and they were somewhat left-leaning. So the Ba'ath Party, really believes in having a, what I think is called a secular government, meaning no religion in government. So they're the opposite of the Iranian, somewhat theocratic state. They're also the opposite of the Taliban in Afghanistan, who later harbored Al Qaeda, and that's a whole nother underreported story where we were barely ever reminded of our involvement in helping the Taliban come to power in Afghanistan by funding what was called the Mujahideen, which was a more theocratically, leaning, a more jihadist, if you want to call it that, leaning movement against the Soviet sympathizing government there. And I'm quite certain that Soviet sympathizing government, that socialist, communist, whatever they were called at the time, was also secular. They didn't want religion and state mixed together, as the Ba'ath Party in Iraq didn't want religion and state mixed together, and as is my understanding, the Ba'ath Party in Syria didn't want that. So we're not told any of this history. We're helping support Iraq to invade Iran. And then later, when the wheel turns against Iraq, when the Bush administration made what I firmly believed at the time, and I do to this day, were knowing false claims against Iraq, the public weren't really taught of any of this, and the war fever grew, and then we invaded this country, not even realizing we're overthrowing a government that actually supports separation of mosque and state, or church and state, not realizing that at all. So shortly after that invasion, I read an article, I think it was an op-ed, maybe in the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, I can't remember which one. And that author, said, look, Americans, think twice before you're going to invade Syria, because the Syrian government, as this author pointed out, yeah, you can say it's oppressive, it's authoritarian, but it really allows and protects religious freedom. The author gave an example of like people sharing the same mosque or church, Muslims and Christians and that type of thing. And Syria was like safe. People could transact business and that type of thing there. So they said think twice before overthrowing that government, because that government also was Ba'ath Party. It was in the old days maybe more aligned with the Soviets, and it's still aligned with Russia. So okay, well, the Iraq War went horribly after a while, and so did the Afghanistan War. So we were too tied up, and the war fever started to tone down. So the actually invading Syria wasn't going to happen. But under I believe it was Obama, we then supported the overthrow of the Ba'ath Party in Syria, and that kind of came to a stalemate. So here we are today with all this history we're never told about, and bombing these countries repeatedly, so it's really hard to disentangle what's actually in our national interest, and how do you define national interest? Because remember, I've shown you in other videos, it isn't just the power of the fossil fuel petrochemicals. Like all those are those countries had these national oil wells, which those international businesses weren't too happy with. But it's also the power of the arms manufacturers. The large defense contractors, as I've shown you with both Trump and Biden's ties to those industries. So it becomes really difficult to disentangle what we're doing for our own protection and what we're doing to really sort of protect these different industries. It's very difficult to know that, and especially when you have a media who really doesn't highlight that, right? And all during the whole Trump administration, they never talked about Trump's ties to any of this, and they kind of overlooked Biden's ties as well. So again, I'm going to come back to, we mentioned the name Khanna at the beginning, and as I said in other videos, if you're looking for somewhere to support, don't go back to Trump and this what I call false conservatism. Okay, it's not conservative. It's just taking defending these entitled industries and wrapping it in a conservative cloak. Don't go back to that. Now, you might disagree with some liberal social policies, as I may as well, but I still say, support people like Khanna or Nina Turner, AOC, and you say, hey, I don't agree with you on this or that, but these are the people, trying to offer an alternative to this military-industrial complex and this system we're dealing with. I hope you found this helpful. And if you did, please subscribe and click that notification bell. Please share my video so other people can find out, and comment and support a Patreon to help me keep this effort going. And until next time, peace be with you.